El cuerpo es un diario donde es posible leer lo sucedido en los últimos días de vida. La rigidez de algunos músculos revela privación forzosa de agua. La presencia de poco carne en la caja torácica atestigua falta de alimentación durante largos periodos. En las lesiones infligidas aparecen los signos visibles de una violencia inaudita, sufrida bien antes de zarpar, en las cárceles libias o bien en la barcaza misma, porque a veces durante la travesía algunas personas son asesinadas a bastonazos por los barqueros delante de todos, a modo de advertencia. De nada sirve pedir agua, de nada sirve protestar, so pena de muerte inmediata a golpes. Normalmente, a los que han matado en la barcaza se los tira al mar. A veces, a quien osa quejarse por las condiciones de viaje se los arroja vivo entre las olas. Es siempre difícil trabajar con cadáveres recobrados en el mar. Los cuerpos están empapados de agua y sal, parecen esponjas. Todo está deformado, la cara, los músculos, los órganos. La piel se cae, si es que no ha desaparecido ya, y a veces se ven las marcas de los mordiscos de los peces. Todo es viscoso y gelatinoso. Al tacto, casi no parece un ser humano. So this account by a paramedic from Davide Enya's notes on a shipwreck, or Appunti per un naufragio. It sheds light on what transpires in the last days of the migrants who die or they go missing where their journey takes place under irregular and precarious circumstances. And with this, we are glad to open the Lampedusa Charter, the first Lampedusa Charter Policy Lab on the principle of dignity, on protecting dignity and human rights, to reflect on how local governments with other stakeholders on the ground can better provide dignified treatment to these very migrants and their families. And I pass the floor to my colleague, Fatima Fernandez.
Thank you, Brachi, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for being there. I will try to be short because we are a bit late and also because we have come here to work. So if you are here, it's because either you work with or for local governments, or you work for migration, with migration, or you have a life experience that is close to it. So that is why we thought you were useful in this part of our work. So already thank you for being here. Also, if you're here, we're sure you know about Lampedusa, what happens every day in the shores of Lampedusa. What we are not sure is whether you know what happens when migratory projects fail, because media accounts or conversations often end when either the migratory route, the migratory journey succeeds, or when it fails. But of course, things continue after that, and this workshop is about who is responsible for that, what does it entail to deal with it, and how we are placed with regards to that. So as you know, since 2020, we've been working under the leadership of Lampedusa to create a global conversation led by local governments on migration governance. We did it in many ways. We try to foster peer-to-peer learning, so support all those that want to learn from other local governments working on the ground. We do advocacy where we need to do it at the UN, with member states, with other stakeholders. And we came up with the Lampedusa Charter on Dignified Human Mobility and Territorial Solidarity, which is a text that you have on your tables, and that is the result of 2 years of consultations with more than 200 local governments and stakeholders, and that is structured in 7 principles. Each principle has 5 working priorities. This charter was approved in 2022, and we are now really trying to implement it. The first principle of the Lampedusa Charter is dignity. And dignity tackles dignity through life, but also after migratory projects fail, because this is the responsibility of someone. And local governments have a lot to do in this. So that is why we are having this policy lab, and that is why we are very grateful for all of you to share your knowledge, your ideas on how we can tackle this reality from the ground. But before we start, we wanted to have some words from our colleagues of Lampedusa and from our colleagues of SFAX that have been co-leading this process. And I would like to ask my colleagues whether the colleagues from Lampedusa or SFAX are ready. Otherwise, we will bring them to the closing. So, do we have them? Okay, yes, we have them. So in your screens, you're seeing Carlo De Marco, that has been working with Lampedusa for the past 4 years, at least, that we know. And he is the Secretary General of the Border Towns and Island Network that is led also by Lampedusa and that tackles specific issues related to border cities. And we have Wajdi Aidi, who is the former deputy mayor of the city of Sfax in Tunisia, and now leading the same work, but from civil society. So thank you to both of you for being here, and I want to leave the floor to Carlo to let us know a little bit more about why we are all here and what does Lampedusa want with bringing us around this table. Good morning. Buongiorno, Marco.
Buongiorno Fatima, buongiorno a tutti voi. Quando si parla di dignità delle persone, Lampedusa negli ultimi 30 anni ha dovuto fare sforzi quotidiani per garantire la dignità delle persone, indipendentemente dalla loro provenienza, dal loro percorso migratorio, perché per fortuna nella stragrande maggioranza dei casi le persone riescono a sbarcare a Lampedusa, arrivano vive. E questo è un fatto positivo e che porta alla necessità di doversi prendere cura di ogni tipologia di situazione nel momento in cui questa arriva sulle coste dell'isola, perché ogni singola persona che ha affrontato il viaggio migratorio è traumatizzata a livello fisico, a livello psicologico. Le esigenze specifiche di salute, di assistenza sanitaria, di assistenza psicologica sono forti, sono differenziate se ad arrivare è un bambino, se ad arrivare è una donna incinta, una donna che ha subito degli abusi durante il proprio percorso migratorio. E quindi nel corso di 30 anni un'isola dove non c'era nulla ad attendere i migranti al momento del loro arrivo, ha sviluppato una struttura e un sistema di governance complesso che via via ha potuto garantire la dignità delle persone al momento del loro arrivo a Lampedusa, con delle situazioni a volte estreme, con migliaia di sbarchi nell'arco di pochissime ore, come è avvenuto nello scorso settembre, ad esempio. L'altro aspetto è quello delle persone che non riescono ad arrivare a Lampedusa e uno può pensare perché Lampedusa è i morti in mare. I morti alla fine muoiono in mare, muoiono nel Mediterraneo. Perché il legame con Lampedusa? Perché effettivamente purtroppo una grandissima parte delle persone restano disperse nel corso del loro viaggio per il Mediterraneo e di loro non si ha più notizia, ma sono tantissime quelle che muoiono durante i soccorsi, quelle che muoiono pochi minuti o poche ore dopo essere arrivate a Lampedusa in condizioni di salute critiche. Vi sono i bambini che muoiono durante la traversata e questo ehm, è un qualcosa che riguarda quotidianamente l'isola di Lampedusa, indipendentemente da quando queste notizie vadano sui media o quando restino nella conoscenza di pochi. Rimane il fatto che quotidianamente Lampedusa si trova a dover vivere la situazione di gestire un lutto, di ricevere sul proprio territorio delle persone traumatizzate perché hanno perso uno dei propri cari durante la traversata, madri che hanno perso il loro piccolissimo figlio durante la traversata. E questo avviene in una piccolissima isola di 6.000 abitanti, dove le strutture locali sono poco adeguate e non sufficienti neanche per le esigenze sanitarie di base della popolazione. E, e questo naturalmente mette sotto grandissima pressione le istituzioni locali, la comunità locale. La quotidianità di un sindaco di Lampedusa è quella di essere svegliato nel cuore della notte perché c'è la necessità di trovare una bara o più bare, perché arriva notizia del fatto che al molo ci sono delle persone che non sono riuscite a sopravvivere alla traversata. E questo avviene a Lampedusa, avviene in altre piccole isole del Mediterraneo, avviene sui confini terrestri dell'Europa, penso alla rotta balcanica. E, e quindi è un qualcosa che mette in comune tanto località di terra, tanto località di mare, mette in connessione la sponda sud e la sponda nord del Mediterraneo, perché se è vero che noi piangiamo dei morti a Lampedusa, ci sono delle famiglie nei luoghi d'origine, ci sono famiglie in Tunisia, in Libia, nell'Africa subsahariana e in tutti i paesi dove vengono questi migranti. Prendersi cura della dignità delle persone che muoiono e delle persone che restano è un fattore di cruciale importanza e che deve essere affrontato con la collaborazione di tutte le istituzioni, di tutti i livelli istituzionali. E qui diciamo che la questione principale diventa quella dei pochi poteri, dei limitatissimi poteri che hanno i comuni nell'ambito della gestione delle migrazioni. Questo lo vediamo molto chiaramente a Lampedusa, dove il comune di fatto non ha nessun ruolo, nessuna responsabilità diretta nella gestione dei flussi migratori. C'è un sistema di governance complesso che dipende da autorità nazionali, da autorità sanitarie regionali, ma il comune ha limitatissimi poteri di intervento. Ed è lì che è necessario che i comuni prendano l'iniziativa che significa sfruttare la propria vicinanza alla cittadinanza, il proprio ruolo di autorità locale che può mettere in dialogo tutti gli attori coinvolti nella gestione di un determinato fenomeno. Questo a Lampedusa sta avvenendo con un tavolo tecnico coordinato dal Comune che riunisce tutti gli attori coinvolti nella prima accoglienza di migranti, a partire dalle autorità sanitarie, dalla Croce Rossa, in modo tale da poter intercettare immediatamente tutte le situazioni di vulnerabilità e poterle affrontare nella maniera più tempestiva e più efficace possibile. Penso per esempio alle donne che arrivano incinta e in procinto di partorire. Ed è questo che deve fare una comunità locale, per quanto piccola sia, prendere l'iniziativa, mettere attorno allo stesso tavolo gli attori che possono fare la differenza, che possono generare un cambiamento, che possono sviluppare, attuare delle procedure che garantiscano realmente la dignità delle persone. E questo si può fare a livello locale e allo stesso tempo si può fare mettendo in confronto, mettendo in interazione positiva le esperienze dei luoghi al confine dell'Europa che condividono le stesse esperienze e dialogando con le località al di fuori dell'Europa da dove i migranti provengono. Questo Lampedusa lo ha fatto mettendo insieme una rete di città e isole di confine che attualmente copre 14 città da 11 paesi europei, che sta provando esattamente a fare questo, mettere in comune le proprie esperienze e sperimentare pratiche innovative. E questo lo facciamo anche con questa preziosissima partnership con l'UCLG. Lampedusa da questo punto di vista vuole esserci, vuole richiamare questo protagonismo, questa centralità datale dal suo ruolo che ha avuto nella storia delle migrazioni negli ultimi 30 anni e non si tira indietro. E l'impegno di Lampedusa è anche con la partecipazione a eventi come questo Policy Lab è quella di voler essere protagonista e voler dialogare con altri attori che possono aiutarci a garantire la dignità delle persone che arrivano e delle persone che purtroppo non riescono a superare il loro viaggio migratorio. Vi ringrazio e resto a disposizione per ogni domanda che possiate avere.
Grazie Marco. Grazie mille Marco, grazie di esserci e grazie di portarci la realtà di Lampedusa dalla quale scaturisce questo seminario. And now we are going to watch the ID speaking to us from Sfax, first from the municipality, now from civil society, but always very committed to the Lampedusa Charter process. Bonjour Wajdi, c'est vraiment un plaisir de vous avoir avec nous. Allez-y.
Merci Fatima. Bonjour à vous tous. Je tiens à vous remercier, remercier CGLU, Emilia, Fatima pour l'engagement sur la question migratoire. Je remercie aussi la municipalité de Lampedusa, toutes les personnes, villes, agences, organisations et associations qui travaillent en général dans le domaine des droits de l'homme, en particulier la mobilité humaine, l'asile aussi, avec beaucoup de convictions, humanisme, morale et beaucoup de principes. Je suis heureux de participer avec vous à cette réunion que je considère importante et nécessaire. Disons, un véritable nouveau point de départ pour tous les travaux antérieurs auxquels nous avons tous contribué pour atteindre ce premier laboratoire et après toutes les étapes que nous avons franchies depuis, disons, depuis 2020, mais aussi depuis 2014. La CGLU a bien accompagné la ville de Sfax et toutes les autres villes et les autres partenaires, notamment les associations qui ont fondé ce chemin de la charte de Lampedusa il y a maintenant 10 ans à l'île de Lampedusa. Je rappelle aussi le projet MC2CM avec les CMPD, ONU Habitat, la CGLU bien sûr, qu'ils ont, et la ville de Lampedusa avec le président Toto Martello et maintenant avec Monsieur Filippo Manino, qu'ils ont tous contribué à cet effort et la ville de Lampedusa reste un pionnier pour atteindre les objectifs, je crois, de la charte. La charte de Lampedusa a été annoncée et adoptée lors du Conseil mondial de la CGLU à Guangzhou, en Corée du Sud, en novembre 2020, avec beaucoup d'enthousiasme, de sérénité et de courage. Et nous aspirons tous à un changement fondamental dans la manière d'aborder la question de la migration. Ne pas, je crois, ne pas la considérer comme une question de frontières, de politique protectionniste officielle des États ou de discrimination et de sélectivité ou même de racisme, je pense. La mobilité humaine est une pratique humaine naturelle. Je crois que depuis l'existence de l'homme, et qui parmi nous et ceux qui nous ont précédé plutôt, n'a pas immigré ou n'a pas réfléchi ou envisagé la migration. Par conséquent, la migration doit être liée à la dignité humaine, la liberté, le droit et le dialogue, avec beaucoup de vérité. Il faut dire la vérité sur cette question-là, comme a été présenté au début de notre séance. Je crois qu'avec tout cela, et c'est ce quoi aspire la charte de Lampedusa et souhaiter y parvenir et atteindre. Nous sommes convaincus que le chemin ne sera pas facile, mais nous le suivrons quand même et nous avons déjà commencé avec, je crois, notre première rencontre et ce premier laboratoire. Je crois que le rôle de la CGLU est important en matière de leadership et de plaidoyer, comme vient de le dire Fatima, et le rôle des villes aussi, même avec un grand manque de compétences et de moyens sur la question de la migration, les organisations et les acteurs de la société civile aussi. Moi, j'étais ancien adjoint au maire, je ne le suis pas maintenant, mais je suis toujours engagé sur cette question-là. Vraiment, notre ville, Sfax, est une ville de départ, mais aussi une ville de transit vers Lampedusa. Et presque chaque semaine, je ne vais pas dire chaque jour, on vit des atrocités, vraiment beaucoup de tristesse avec les accidents et les naufrages et les morts et les corps et les cercueils. Je pense que le rôle de tous ces acteurs et de vous présents ici et les villes est très important pour atteindre les objectifs de la charte. Et je pense aussi à la nécessité du dialogue avec toutes les parties prenantes, que ce soit l'ONU, les gouvernements aussi, même si leur politique n'est pas toujours en faveur de nos objectifs, avec toutes disons, les parties prenantes et le secteur privé aussi, et leurs implications sont nécessaires pour avancer ensemble. Je souhaite à vous tous bonne continuation et beaucoup de réussite. Et on va continuer sur ce chemin, le chemin de Lampedusa, pour la dignité humaine pour les migrants et pour une migration qui respecte les droits de l'homme. Merci à vous tous.
Merci beaucoup, Wajdi, vraiment. And after this, we have 1 hour to work. So I will give the floor now to my colleagues, Juan Carlos and Prachi, to guide you through this exercise.
Thank you very much, Fatima, and welcome, everyone. So as our colleagues just mentioned, this is the first policy lab that we're organizing around the Lampedusa Charter, and the idea is to kind of start a discussion about this particular topic today and kind of move forward to the different commitments that the Lampedusa Charter has done. So as you might have seen, we divided you into stakeholders, as we think for this first kind of lab, it's good to kind of dialogue between similar stakeholders and kind of see what the challenges are, the needs are, and how can we work better with other stakeholders. So what we will be doing in the second half of the session is kind of go through these 3 questions that we will present to you from your stakeholder point of view. So what are the challenges that local and regional governments face? How can they, what opportunities are there to deal with these failed migratory journeys in a more dignified way? And how can they work with other stakeholders? And the same for whether it's civil society, international NGOs, local NGOs, from their point of view, how can they collaborate with local and regional governments, and also other stakeholders such as academia, media, think tanks. So that's the idea of today. But before we start that group work discussion in the tables that you have, and also we'll have the opportunity for the online participants to contribute to this, I would like to get to know who is in the table. So let's, for this we will be using Mentimeter. As you know, we like the Mentimeter tool a lot. So if we go to the next slide, you will see the instructions and the QR code. So with your phone, whether you're online or here in a room, you can access menti.com and use the code 85794789 to participate in this interactive consultation. Let's see how. I'll give you some more time. So again, you can scan the QR code or go directly to menti.com. And use the code 85794789 to join. And let's start moving to the first question. So this is to know who is joining us today. I think by the tables and the division of the tables, we see that there's a lot of representation from different stakeholders. But are you from a local or regional government? From UN agencies or national governments, member states, for international or local NGOs, academia or media, or other stakeholders. So I think we have a good representation. I think we had 3 tables of local governments, 2 of civil society, and 2 of other stakeholders here in the room. But it's good to know also who is joining us online. So I think we have a good balance. Member states, we always want to interact with them more, but we can take this discussion to our advocacy processes later. So that's good to know that we have some. Let's go to the next one. And for this, it's actually to know where are you joining us from. So you will be able to pin in the map the location that you are joining us from or you're coming from. So although this project lab starts as a Euro-Mediterranean conversation, I know that there's a lot of other stakeholders in the room and also online. But it's quite broad, the participation, all the way from Asia, Latin America, Africa. And yeah, I guess it's a lot of Europe and Northern Africa probably being put together there. Okay, let's go to the last question of this round. And as our colleagues were explaining today, we are dealing with the first principle of the Lampedusa Charter. But it's also good to know what is the main area that you, whether you're a local government, civil society, international NGO, that you feel you are working on. Because I know not everyone is dealing with this issue of the dignified treatment of failed migrant journeys, but they're also working on other aspects. And if you don't know the specific details, just go with what that word means to you. And you can look at the Lampedusa Charter after this session and learn a little bit more of the commitments that are in that. So I think we have quite a good balance, around 20 people who work on dignity, 16 in equity, recognition. 10, I guess what we mean by recognition is a little bit less easy to understand. So good. We see that local, like among the stakeholders, we covered a lot of the principles. But again, today we are going to be concentrating or focusing on the first one. And for that, I will pass the floor to my colleague, Prachi, who will guide us to the questions that we will be having. And for this, in the tables, you will have the opportunity to cover all the 3 questions in your tables. For those who are joining us online, we will continue using the Mentimeter consultation. So we will have 3 different slides with the 3 different questions, and we will pass them every 8-10 minutes so that you can contribute to the discussion in that way. So you can answer to the specific questions online, and we will show your contributions in the screens, but it will be 1 question at a time. While here in the group, you will be able to discuss the 3 questions like simultaneously or as you see that it works better for each group. So Prachi, please go ahead.
Right. Thank you, Juan Carlos. So colleagues, I already put on your table, you'll see there are 3 questions, like as per the language you speak. And I apologize for one table which is missing a question, but I'll come over there and I'll read them out. So the questions are, what challenges are you facing towards the provision of dignified treatment to missing or dead migrants and their families? The second question is, how can the current processes be made more dignified? And the third question is, how can local and regional governments collaborate with other stakeholders in this regard? So feel free to choose any of the question and discuss that for 20 minutes around your table. You will also see the colored paper and some pens, and you can jot down your answers. And we leave you here for 20 minutes. Yes. I would repeat, what challenges are you facing in this regard? How can current processes be made more dignified? And how can local and regional governments collaborate with other stakeholders in this regard?
And just to clarify, so for those who are in the room, the idea is that you discuss this in your tables. We'll have 20-25 minutes, and then we will ask you to report back on some of your key findings. And for those online, we will be picking up your contributions through the Mentimeter exercise that you can see.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. The questions are now on the screen as well.
Yes, it's safe that everyone was at the UCLG Congress.
Online participants can feel free to use the Mentimeter They can join us using the code 85794789. I repeat.
Challenge, I think we can look for more challenge. The challenges are important. If we identify challenge, we can answer other two questions very easily. Agreed on this. Yes, what challenges are we facing in this regard? The challenges are important. What I mean is, if we identify the challenge, we can answer the two questions following easily. We need to know what are the challenges that we are faced with, and we can answer how can processes take.
One more.
Obviously, see what how to do it and how to justify it.
One more clarification. So the challenges that we are discussing are the challenges about how to treat, how to deal with failed migrant journeys and how to make them more dignified. So the questions that we're discussing are all about the issue of failed migrant journeys and what local governments and other stakeholders can do about them to deal with, the people who die in their journey, the families, the bodies, and all of the competences and issues that raise from this. So just don't forget that that's the key issue that we're discussing in this lab.
Okay, so what do you think? Are we agreed on that we need to identify the challenge? Then we can take the question and for us, it's all about migration. See, we list this factor of migration. Most of the migrations are either from Middle East or Africa or so this experience is from what do you think these questions can answer? How many migrations we have?
So online participants, we can move on to the next question. In your case, those at the table can continue with the questions they have chosen. But for online participants, we have already put the next question on. So colleagues, online participants, we have already the third question on the Mentimeter. How can LRGs collaborate with other stakeholders in this regard to ensure dignified treatment to missing migrants and their families? And I would also encourage the participants at the table, the participants with us at the room, to already nominate a repertoire who will report back to us, and we will come over to your tables this moment.
effectively border 6 different countries. There's an influx hitting you from those countries. They don't come via boat.
You have 2 minutes. You could choose any question and you could present.
That they face in a boat. But
Okay, see you in some time.
we don't have any plans to deal with migrants when they arrive. Because we have our own problem. We have our own problem. But what happens because they arrive in a visa, it does impact on the ability of services and municipalities to be extended. So there are a lot of complaints that queues in hospitals become longer. Now it drains the health system. There are no places in schools because we're not building new schools.
So colleagues, we urge you to end the discussion. And now we would start the reporting of your takeaways. And I would first approach the local and regional governments table. 1 minute? Okay, 1 minute. So I will approach the other local and regional governments table, English-speaking table, and Josef Canals, MedCities. Yes.
So, colleagues, if we can pay attention, we're going to start the reporting back. And after we hear from the different tables, hopefully we have some time for open discussion and listening to more comments. Everyone, can we have your attention here? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, bon dia a tothom. Here we have discussed about, the first question is how can, the challenges.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Josep Canals. I'm the Secretary General of MedCities. MedCities is the network of 80 municipalities and union of municipalities from the whole Mediterranean region, the 3 continents. Here we have representative from the different networks for peace and from Croatia and Netherlands and Georgia. Georgia? Okay. So the first way, the challenges, common places, lack of competences from the point of view of municipalities, lack of competences, lack of resources, and mainly lack of knowledge on how to deal these specific and so difficult processes like mourning people, grieving for the lost ones, and some practical things like how to deal, for example, with corpses. You have read some very poignant, explicit images. So how to deal with that from the point of view, for example, of municipality or a municipality like Lampedusa, which is an island. So how can you deal that alone as a municipality? It's impossible. So these are the lack of things that we miss, the type of things that we lack. The second one was about the dignified manner. Well, this is not so specific, but it's more conceptual. I think it's treat these people like humans, not like numbers, like figures. I think if states, when you know some specific cases, you humanize these people. You put faces. There are stories behind. So it's important to deal this politics with a more human approach, not only numbers that we have to erase, but people that we have to deal with in a dignified manner. It's not concrete, but it's an approach that we thought it might be useful. And the third one, which is the how can we improve our work? I think we have experiences here like by networking, like sharing knowledge, like MedCities, for example. We are an example of that, or the Institution for Cities and Peace. Sharing knowledge, sharing best cases, sharing mistakes. It's very useful. We feel that it's very, very useful to share knowledge and to raise awareness among those that are not aware anymore. There are some mayors that are aware, but there are mayors that are not aware of that, and they don't care. So we need to increase this. And also by working together, we can lobbying in front of the states to be heard, to be listened, and helped to deal these issues. I think that's
Thank you very much. So very, very important messages. I think when we talk about dignity, the key issue is treating people as humans, not forgetting that. And often they're treated as numbers, and we forget about them after they die. So it's a very important topic, the one that we're discussing today, because it not only affects the people whose journey ends, but also the families that are left behind, or where they were intending to go. So the third point that you were making was about the connections and working with others. So I want to invite the table of other stakeholders. I don't know who your rapporteur is, but if you can explain a little bit, introduce yourself and who was in your table before sharing your results.
Okay, good morning to everybody. We're a mixed table of academia. I'm in a university in Barcelona. I'm from Brazil. Also in Barcelona, and also trade unions that are working with public services, and from Istanbul. So we've been discussing basically what could local governments do with other stakeholders. And one of the things we all agree on is that there needs to be more services. The location of where the refugee asylum seekers are can be very important because their access to facilities, their knowledge of their access to facilities. We think that maybe user maps could be very useful. We're thinking of also the right to work as a problem when they're in their status, that they still are not with a refugee status. This creates a lot of problems. We were talking about the option of free mobility or access to public transport. Basically service, we see that's something that can help a lot in integration if we're talking about connecting with the people that are working with the built environment, for example, as us, which are the factors that can enhance integration through location factors, like having access to services, as I said before, et cetera. No? We brainstormed a lot of things, but one of the things that we thought was very important was access to services. We think this can be something that can make a difference when it comes to integration and people finding a place that they can relate to. Yeah, basically that. Thanks.
Thank you, Carmen. That is a very key aspect, and it's crucial that you touch this point of a human geography in a way that migrants are already in our cities, and what's the next step? That's the access to services. And with that, I would be going to the next table to my friend here, Junaid Rafiq from UCLG MIVA.
Well, thank you. My name is Junaid Rafiq. I am representative of UCLG MIVA, our secretariat in Istanbul. So basically, we had 3 questions, and we decided to take the first question as the main component we can discuss, mainly because the question was the challenges that we face. So what we thought in our table, where we have members from South Africa, from UCLG Africa, from CMR, from Korea, from Germany, UCLG ASPAC, and Commonwealth as well. So we had a very diverse table, and we realized that at all of these different places, we have different issues that we are tackling for the identities of migrations when we talk about different challenges at all these places. In South Africa, there are migrations that are mainly economic migrations, so the local governments are faced with unprepared challenges. They are not ready for that. Okay, national governments are letting them in, but the local governments are unprepared. So we need to identify the policies at the national level that could be implemented at the local level. For Africa, there is climate change, there is recession, people are looking for better employment opportunities moving to Europe and other countries. So when people move there, they are moving irregularly. That creates a lot of challenges for the local service provisions in these countries. It can be anything from health to local services, water, sanitation, etc. So there needs to be policies, interstate dialogue throughout the world. The leaders need to take initiatives to build on this and to somehow identify and create solutions for these problems. We had a good discussion about the migrations in Germany. So our colleague and the representative, Vice Mayor from Germany, I think yes, Mr. Andreas, he highlighted the need for legal mechanisms for, in a way that, okay, we are having expats in different ways, doctors, engineers, why can't we have policies for migrations as well? Yes, I think that's pretty much about the discussions we had here. Thank you. Thank you, Prachi.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's, well, we started the policy lab with focusing on the Mediterranean. It's very important to see how this is also a reality in many different regions. It will be also interesting while we go to the other tables to see some of the results from the online consultation. So if we can start showing the first question and maybe look at what, like we will, after we hear from another table, we can look at the results from the first question. So if we can go back to the first question and put it on the screen. In the meantime, we could go to this other table and change again from local governments to other stakeholders.
All right. So I invite Razan Ismail from the association Qudwa to present the insights.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Razan. I'm representing the table for civil society and NGOs. Some of us work with migrants and some of us don't, which actually provides a lot of insights from different perspectives. So obviously, we face a lot of challenges. So we actually discussed mainly, and I guess most and foremost, is the responsibility, that there's a lot of responsibility actually pushed to civil society to actually receive migrants or refugees upon arrival because there are not enough infrastructures to receive them. So we need to kind of be sharing the responsibility, but also accountability and resources. And civil society is usually at the bottom, scraping the bottom of the barrel, basically. There's also a massive inequality of balance. There's limited and uneven distribution of resources, like we mentioned. There's uneven response, and definitely informed by racism and neocolonialism and discrimination. And we've seen that against specific nationalities and races, and we can see it even now today, how human lives don't really matter. We see it in Gaza today, every day these days. There's not enough focus on prevention. So not only prevention, we specifically also talk about, climate migration, how everything happening in Europe is actually impacting other countries, causing mass climate migration. But it's not really accompanied with specific structures for reception either. So there's a disproportionate impact versus accountability, I guess. And even the responses that we have at the moment and the response structures are not based on human rights. And many of us actually already mentioned, but it bears mentioning again that human dignity is based on seeing every human life as a valuable life, whether we work or not, whether we have an economic ROI, return on investment as people, we're still people, and I think every human life matters. The states don't usually fulfill their commitments, and they have to go beyond the emergency response into sustainable, evergreen structures of reception. And we also kind of discussed what can regional governments and local, how do they collaborate with different stakeholders? And we mentioned from New York the example of a city citizenship, a card that actually provides the every inhabitant of that city to access to basic rights such as access to healthcare, access to basic housing, basic human rights, and even beyond to even renting cars, etc. And I think I would also want to highlight, this is my personal, not the table, but the shameful new pact on migration and asylum. I think it's contradictory to everything that we're doing here today, honestly, and we'll have to see how it impacts reception. I'm very, very I fear for our future in Europe. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Razan, for highlighting the elephant in the room, that is the EU Pact for Migration, and also the concept of inclusive citizenship and moving from emergency to more sustainable responses with a focus on prevention. And UCLG in the past has invited local governments and other actors for peer learning on similar issues. You'll see these notes on your tables as well. And with that, we go to the online participants for a moment.
Okay, so you can see in the screen some of the comments that we have received in regards to the first question. So the challenges in terms of decentralization, lack of resources to fulfill the competences that are given, the lack of legal and financial resources that local and regional governments have to face, lack of competences but strong responsibilities. I think when we talked about the dignified treatment of people who die in their journey, it is still very unclear whether that's a responsibility of the national government, the local government, and even within the humanitarian sector, it's not very clear which sector or which cluster takes responsibilities of this, depending on the context. But we also, also have communication, and then intercultural dialogue. I think the issue of culture is also very important when we talked about migration and also about the dignified treatment of migrants, whether they finish their journey or not. So now let's go to this table over here, the local and regional governments in Spanish-speaking group. So if you could, si puedes presentarte, decir un poco quién te acompañó en la mesa y los comentarios que hayan discutido.
Buenos días para todos y para todas. Nuestra mesa es una mesa de gobiernos locales y de ciudades. Y hemos estado, espérate para ver cómo lo vamos. Gracias. Hemos estado conversando desde nuestra óptica cómo poder abordar el tema, un tema que merece el mayor trato, dado que la dignidad, todos queremos que nos traten con dignidad donde lleguemos. Ahora imagínense las personas que tienen que llegar a un lugar que no es el suyo y que tienen que buscar no solamente para ellos, porque además generalmente cuando se migra lo que busca son mejores condiciones, pero de llegar o llegar a encontrar esas mejores condiciones, hay un paso muy largo y muy complejo. Nosotros conversábamos de la necesidad de la coordinación para poder atender estos temas, dado que los gobiernos locales siempre tenemos recursos escasos. Y ahora que hablaban por allá de la sociedad civil, nosotros siempre pensamos que la sociedad civil tiene los recursos y los que están desde la sociedad civil piensan que los gobiernos locales tienen los recursos. ¿Qué es lo que nos falta? Coordinación. Y esa coordinación tiene que darse desde, además, el trabajo regional, porque este no es un tema que podemos ver aisladamente, tenemos que verlo mancomunadamente. Y uno de los retos es trabajar mancomunadamente, buscar alianzas estratégicas entre los actores que tenemos que ser responsables de las migraciones. Y finalmente, hacer un llamado para la coordinación también con el gobierno central. ¿Por qué? Porque también un tema que discutíamos en la mesa es que generalmente la planificación sobre estos temas no lo tenemos, no podemos hacer un abordaje como el que quisiéramos, porque cómo se planifica cuando no lo tenés, no tenés claro el tema. Y bueno, hay que hacer planificación, hay que buscar recursos y también hay que trabajar en redes con las ONGs, con el gobierno central, con los gobiernos locales, y tener ese vínculo es primordial. Me soplan si se me olvidó algo. Los municipios chicos, generalmente los municipios pequeños son los que más requieren apoyo, y ahí tenemos que buscar la solidaridad entre los gobiernos locales para poder tener trabajo federativo. Listo. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Karen, de Gobiernos Locales de Costa Rica. Y ahora vamos a ver las respuestas a la segunda pregunta. No sé si quieras comentar un poco, Prachi.
Sí, claro. So, how can current processes be made more dignified? So, of course, legal support, a holistic way of addressing the issue, apoyo psicológico, financial resources, symbolic recognition, by strengthening assistance in critical areas like housing, education, or access to work. Ask communities what they need for their passing rituals to be dignified and base policies and actions on that. That's very important. Talk to the migrants and talk to the local communities, of course. Regularization mechanisms and a role for local governments in them. Asking families and other migrants, and for EU to admit a fair share of legal migration for work purposes from outside, for non-European migrants, I assume.
También tenemos, bueno, la empatía y el respeto mutuo de las entidades de origen y el país de acogida. Y bueno, creo que algo importante, no tratar la muerte de las personas migradas en secreto, pero creo que hacerlo público y hablarlo y hacer este tipo de conversaciones puede ayudar a ese proceso.
And with that, we would go to the other stakeholders table here, and who's the spokesperson? It's Sophie Van Hassen from the Mayor's Mechanism.
Thank you so much. We had a super rich conversation. We had mostly academics around the table, but also the Mayor's Migration Council and then myself from the Mayor's Mechanism. So I'll try to do justice to the discussions, but please add on if I've forgotten anything. I think we tried to be ambitious and look at the 3 questions, but in the end, really just looked at question 1 and 2 mostly. So I'll try to combine a little bit, and a lot has been said already. I'll start with the rise in xenophobia and migration being used and weaponized politically. I think this is something we discussed as really threatening the dignity of migrants. And we had examples, for example, from the UK, on this. The second part, and it was also just referenced in the bullets, is really the lack of regular pathways for people to migrate, which is creating a whole range of challenges that we're seeing in terms of service provision. It results in discrimination on the housing market, for example. It creates a whole, let's say, army of informal migrants that are being employed in really precarious circumstances. We also talked about, let me look at my notes, lack of mandates, of course, and lack of budget for local governments. We also talked about, the need for the humanitarian sector to shift the thinking of funding from camps to urban settlements, and really looking at urban context as also an opportunity for migrants. And I think this is something that you had mentioned in terms of countering this harmful and polarizing narrative of migration becoming also a source of hope and sustainability. We also talked about the importance of working with and talking to host communities, and not, I would say, categorizing host communities as being not willing to accept newcomers in their communities, but rather really working with them. And there's a lot of examples from local governments there. Another challenge that we discussed was how the challenges that we see in terms of welcoming migrants are much interconnected with the urban poor and other people in cities that are vulnerable. So how can local governments look at these intersections was something that we discussed. Access to services was obviously a big point. We talked about the lack of coordination. We just heard that too. The need to work with civil society. The need also for example, academia to partner with local governments and train public servants. Did I forget anything? And we heard a lot of kind of promising examples also with national governments helping to provide information about what type of services are there. So also national governments really providing a critical role there too. Did I forget anything? You talked about, obviously, and this is what we discussed as well, on the need to identify the corpses of migrants that have deceased. And what is really lacking there is the need to coordinate between different levels of services that work on that. For example, the police, but local administration and civil society too. So I think that resonates with what we discussed. Anything I forgot? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, and you say you only discussed questions 1 and 2, but I think you covered a lot of already the opportunities there, and how can local governments work with other stakeholders. And I think it's also, we're going to be looking at some of the responses online about this. So I think one topic that has been emerging here, it's, for one side, the need to continue the discussion about migration and making it less treacherous, so that preventing those deaths, but also the big challenges that this present for local governments in terms of service provision, while also having to deal with the emergency of those arrivals and those deaths that are happening in very small places like Lampedusa. So some ideas that are coming out from this discussion, building common frameworks, bringing these kind of debates to the European Union, the UN, opening access for migrants and civil society organizations to articulate and coordinate their work better, decentralized cooperation on climate-induced migration as this topic becomes even bigger and more important. Open spaces of dialogue, listening to migrants that have witnessed these migratory processes. So I think it's also a good opportunity to include those migrants that have fulfilled those journeys, to understand better what can be done as part of those journeys. You want to comment on some other ones, Prachi?
Yeah, sure. So I'll come down. Okay, so I like that one. I think there should be an open stance to really listen to possible innovative solutions coming from grassroots organizations, immigrant associations included. And that's what we have tried to do here with this first Lampedusa Charter Policy Lab, and we would continue. And so we would like to now go to the next table, where we have Claire Hart from Montpellier Mediterranean Metropole.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, merci Fatima. Je vous dis bonjour à toutes et tous. Je suis sur une table francophone, donc je vais m'adresser à vous en français pour faire honneur à mes chers collègues. Alors, nous avons effectivement un petit peu comme nos collègues de l'autre côté, fusionné les trois questions qui étaient quel défi vous êtes confrontés et comment accueillir plus dignement et comment les collectivités peuvent travailler plus efficacement avec l'ensemble des partenaires. Donc on a voulu traiter ça de manière un peu collective. Et ce qui était très intéressant ici, c'est qu'on a eu un véritable mélange de types de collectivités. Nous sommes allés des collectivités françaises, donc Seine-Saint-Denis, Grigny, mais aussi Montpellier et sa métropole, donc avec la Méditerranée devant nos yeux tous les jours, jusqu'au Liban et aussi le Maroc, représenté aussi par le CGLU Afrique. Donc c'était très riche, très large et très différent. On a quelques conclusions que je vous donnerai après, mais la situation est extrêmement différente. Alors, premièrement, je voudrais parler de la situation du Liban, qui est tout à fait unique dans ce sens, puisque le Liban aujourd'hui accueille 30% de sa population, au moins un tiers, 35% même, de personnes venues d'ailleurs, et particulièrement la Syrie et la Palestine. Donc ceci crée d'immenses problèmes avec la population qui aimerait être dans une posture accueillante, mais qui se retrouve confrontée avec les réalités d'avoir une personne sur 3 qui vient d'ailleurs. Donc ça pose des problèmes spécifiques. Et il faut savoir aussi au Liban, et ça vaut la peine, je pense, de prendre le temps de s'y attarder. Au Liban aujourd'hui, la centralité ne fonctionne plus, donc comme très souvent, et c'est notre sujet au CGLU, ce sont les maires qui se retrouvent en première ligne sur les questions de sécurité, sur les questions d'accueil, sur les questions d'intégration. Donc il faut vraiment tenir compte de cette spécificité libanaise. Après, nous passons au Maroc. Le Maroc comme pays de transit aujourd'hui, donc un pays à travers duquel passent énormément de personnes de l'Afrique subsaharienne et qui a une véritable volonté, une politique, je dirais, une stratégie d'intégration. Donc le Maroc a compris qu'il y a un intérêt dans le fait d'accueillir dignement et d'intégrer pleinement les personnes migrantes. Donc aujourd'hui, nous avons 34 000 personnes qui ont été totalement intégrés, qui sont devenus citoyens marocains, qui ont les mêmes droits, qui ont des permis de travail et qui ont été totalement impliqués dans la vie du Maroc, du Royaume du Maroc. Donc c'est un autre cas et ça fonctionne extrêmement bien aujourd'hui pour le Maroc. Après, nous passons donc à l'Europe et à la France. Alors la France est un cas particulier aussi puisque nous avons les collectivités territoriales. Alors là, autour de la table, vous avez des collectivités qui sont très impliquées dans ces questions, qui ont sur leur territoire à peu près une trentaine de % pour les collectivités dans le Grand Paris, 30% de personnes issues de l'immigration donc, et des migrants particulièrement. Donc, une envie immense d'intégrer ces personnes, un état d'esprit qui dit que ce sont une chance en fait pour nos territoires, on le croit. La diversité est une richesse interculturelle absolue et nous faisons tout dans notre pouvoir pour accueillir au mieux. Nous avons en France une charte qui s'appelle la Lanvita, qui nous invite justement à proposer un accueil digne, une hospitalité digne de ce nom, qui passe par une intégration absolue et bien évidemment, et on a discuté de cela entre nous, de la question de la langue et de l'importance d'impliquer les professeurs, les associations de professeurs, ce qui m'amène aux deuxième question. L'importance d'avoir une approche coordonnée. Nous avons aussi en France une problématique de un foisonnement en fait d'initiatives. Et la difficulté pour nous dans nos collectivités, c'est de pouvoir travailler avec tout le monde de manière coordonnée afin d'offrir et de proposer aux personnes migrantes le meilleur accueil possible, les meilleurs services possibles. Donc ça, c'est vraiment très important et c'est un sujet qui nous concerne. Une différence aussi, et ça c'était panne collectivité, entre les associations un peu plus locales, un peu plus grassroots, si je peux me le permettre, et les associations ou les institutions internationales, je pense au UNRWA, HCR, etc., qui ont tendance aussi à travailler un peu en autarcie sur le territoire. Et nous pensons aussi qu'il faut créer du lien entre les deux, entre les petites associations et les grandes institutions internationales. Nous avons aussi parlé du problématique des tensions avec la population. On a parlé du cas libanais où vraiment il y a une tension réelle, mais nous pensons aussi à l'Europe. Aujourd'hui, nous avons les tendances populistes qui émergent et qui nous submergent aussi parfois. Et nous, les collectivités engagées, devons absolument lutter contre cela et porter haut et fort notre message, mais avec les bons arguments, avec, je dirais même, un moyen pour mesurer l'apport des populations dans nos sociétés. On a besoin presque de statistiques, de pouvoir vraiment montrer, démontrer et encore démontrer, puisque on lutte tous les jours contre ces tendances. On a besoin d'avoir ces outils-là à notre disposition. Donc, ce sont peut-être des bonnes pratiques que nous pouvons partager. Nous sommes toutes et tous d'accord pour dire qu'une approche holistique est nécessaire, que nous devons travailler main dans la main avec l'ensemble des partenaires, que nous venons du Liban, de l'Europe ou du Maroc. Et nous pensons que le droit des migrants, les droits humains doivent être absolument sur le devant de la scène. Et nous proposons aussi notre soutien absolu aux associations qui font bateaux ambulance en mer. Je pense à SOS Méditerranée et d'autres. Voilà. Donc j'espère que j'ai fait honneur à tout le monde autour de la table. En tout cas, nous allons, et ça fait plaisir d'être quelques collectivités ensemble des 4 coins de la Méditerranée pour crier haut et fort que la migration est un droit humain. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah. Thank you very much for also kind of bringing back the conversation to the Mediterranean where we started and kind of wrapping up a lot of the discussions that we were doing. As we were mentioning, this was the first policy lab, the first kind of kickstart of these discussions. We hope that although you were divided in the kind of similar stakeholders, you used the opportunity throughout the day to continue this conversation outside or during lunch. But we are running out of time now. So I would like to invite our Secretary General, Emilia Saiz, to kind of bring all of these different comments from different stakeholders together and close the Policy Lab.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tim and Lampedusa and all the partners for this interesting exercise. I have the feeling that the retreat is starting today, because this is the kind of discussion that we want to have, an interactive discussion about very real topics, not abstract issues, very real topics. And I have to confess as well that when we started to work with Lampedusa and partners on this lab, we had doubts, because it was, oh wow, it's a very serious issue. Oh wow, it's a difficult issue. It's a tough issue. Where do we put it? Do we start the day with this? Do we finish the day with this? And I am very happy that we took the decision to put it today, to give it a lot of profile and to start the day like this, so that the rest of our conversations can also be influenced by what we have discussed this morning. 2 thoughts that I think come up from the reactions that you have been giving to the questions. I think it is important to those of us that have a vision of a world where human lives are valued in the same way everywhere, no matter which circumstance, and I hope there are many of those here in this room. We'll need to be much more vocal about how we want that to happen and to give shape to that in our societies than we have been up until now. We will need to share the story much more clearly, and we will need also to tell things not only from a perspective of solidarity. I think this issue is not only a matter of solidarity, it's a matter of humanity and dignity and the type of society and living together that we want to shape. So it's not about being good with someone else and keeping the good feeling that that gives you. No, no. It's about the responsibility of constructing a society of the kind of values that you want for your children in the future, and that I am convinced is the only guarantee for sustainability. That's how simple it is. And that is why you need to hear the calls that someone makes when they find a body and they don't know what to do with it. And that is also why the population needs to be aware of these discussions, because that is what a mayor of Lampedusa deals with, and all of the mayors of all of the Lampedusas of the world need to deal with. And it's not about hiding that, but it's about putting that up front and understanding what that means for the competencies, for the resources, and for the governance structure that we need to shape. And I think departing from that is particularly important for many of the decisions that we will need to take about not only global agendas, but national and regional agendas as well. I think facing the European elections, for instance, but also facing many of the local elections around the world, we need to be clearer about what we are defending. Let me give you one example, and it will come back this afternoon in the session that we are going to have on trends. I am convinced that we have made a huge mistake by not telling the right story about the Sustainable Development Goals. Many of us have considered that the Sustainable Development Goals were too complex to tell, that we wanted to work on them, but maybe not putting the Sustainable Development Goals so much up front. And let's not call it that way because it's too complex for people. I mean, my grandma will not understand it. And since my grandma does not understand it, then we are not going to tell it. And there are many local leaders that have taken that decision, or their teams, saying, yeah, we are working on them, but you know, we don't call them that way. And you know what has happened? What has happened is that someone else is telling that story now. And what they are saying is that the Sustainable Development Goals are dangerous. And if the Sustainable Development Goals are dangerous, these discussions that we have had this morning here will go nowhere. So for me, this work that we are doing with Lampedusa is connecting the dots about our own humanity and the type of global agenda that we want to make. It's about the detail. It's about the reality of the day-to-day, and I hope it will inspire the rest of the retreat. Lampedusa is for us a symbol, not only because of the arrivals, but also because they have managed to make migration a matter for everyone in their community. Those that oppose it, those that have problems because of the consequences, but it is a matter of the community as a whole. And the miracle is they have made it a matter of the global organization as a whole. So I cannot be grateful enough with Lampedusa and with you for starting the day like you have. Let us connect the dots for the rest of the retreat. Thank you very much.
what levels, national and provincial elections. Of course, we are mindful of the reality that political parties would start the campaigns and councillors would have to form part of that campaign. But the impact of that is that SALCA has an annual plan that must be executed. And if we fail to execute that, we would have difficulties for performance for the year. So what we should be doing is to say, let's not suspend. Let's try and ensure that we limit the movement of councillors, for instance, working groups. Let's have them virtual, but working groups will stay present. And the person, but what they will do is be able to sit in a 2-hour, 3-hour working meeting, SALCA processes its issues, and we continue with the business, but at least for 3 hours they are out, they can go back to their campaigns. They are not outside the province or outside the city where they're supposed to be. So we must find a hybrid way of dealing with it, but can't be a blanket closure. It means you must also, as the leadership, it means you as the leadership as well, must say to us, we will see you after May. There's no any decision on it. We understand the impact, but it cannot be a closure of SALCA. It cannot be. Local government continues to deliver its services daily. No, exactly. No, you'll have to deal with it, but it can't be a blanket approach. But also, it must be a discussion of the NEC.